breaking barriers and bridging the gaps between patients and doctors. Welcome to Brainstorming with the Docs and your co-hosts, Dr. Glenn Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos.
All right, everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming with the Docs. I'm Dr. Kolby Condos, my co-host, Dr. Glenn Harrison.
Hey, Dr.
How's it going,
Kolby?
buddy?
Doing great, doing very good. I like this topic because dependency is good and bad.
Yeah, it definitely can be, right? This winter, I guess, I've been a little bit overly dependent on my next door neighbor to remove snow from our driveway because we share a driveway.
Okay.
At least he's fortunate enough, or at least I'm fortunate enough that he's a gracious guy and does it for me. But yeah, definitely wouldn't want to take advantage of that. And I think that segues really well into what we're talking about today, which is what happens or how does an unhealthy dependence on your healthcare provider happen, and what are some of the ramifications if that were to happen? If this is your first time listening or watching and you get value out of this content, please hit like and subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to continue to roll out new content like this each and every week, and you never know when we might roll out something that's applicable to you. So without further ado, let's get rolling on this.
That's right. So unhealthy dependence on your provider. So our podcast is really, and I think this hits home with our podcast because we're always trying to, our tagline is to break the barriers between patients and doctors, and trying to get a higher level of communication so they can work together to get the outcome that they both want. And I think this dependency is necessary, just like, I don't know, your plumber or your snow removal person or whoever it is. There's got to be some dependency, but is it at the point of an unhealthy dependency where both parties set expectations that are not accurate? So I guess to establish, there's got to be a dependency on your medical provider, but is it unhealthy? And what is the definition of unhealthy dependence on your provider? What would that look like?
Well, when I look at like some of my patients that have maybe become overly dependent on me, right? It's the patients that become so reliant on your advice or your care that they can't make decisions within the framework of their own life on their own. Right? So that could be as simple as, well, I want to go on vacation, but I'm nervous that this could happen. Or, well, I really want to cook this, but I don't know how to do it. I know that I have some dietary restrictions. Do you think it's okay if I do this? And it gets really frustrating for them because they feel like they need this help. And then as a provider,
and they're scared to take any step on their own.
Right. And then as a provider, it gets really frustrating too, because, you're not only trying to coordinate for this one patient, but you're also trying to coordinate with all the other patients that you have that also require care. And, you're going, geez, I just had a meeting with you last week. We covered this. Where's the disconnect?
Yeah. And when this happens, this is one aspect of it, where the patient is waiting for every answer for everything. And they're paralyzed. So then they can't take a step without asking the doctor. And then the doctor's like, whoa, what's going on here? Why do we need to have more input? We covered this, like you said. So the patient becomes excessively dependent on the doctor. And then the doctor, well, maybe the doctor's part of well, of course the doctor's part of the problem. If
100%
that way. So that's where does this dependence come from? Well, the patient expects the doctor to tell them what to do all the time. So that kind of that indoctrination that we talked about before. And then that promotes a lack of confidence in the patient, and it just starts to snowball from there. And then maybe the doctor didn't facilitate the empowerment of the patient, and we've talked about empowerment a lot, patients and doctors, or the doctor in, implementing or facilitating empowerment in the patient to be able to make their own decisions. So I think if the doctor sets them up that it's this way, and nope, it's not that way, it's only this way, well, naturally there's going to be a level of dependency, versus teaching the patient to be able to answer their own questions or come up and be able to solve their own problems.
Right. I think what it comes down to fundamentally is that they whoever's faulted. It could be both parties' fault, right? They have not developed the skills they need or the tools to make those informed decisions on their own. And that could be either party. It could be that the doctor hasn't given them the tools to make an informed decision that they believe is the most correct. The patient doesn't have the confidence to make that decision. There's a bunch of options, I guess, or a bunch of reasons why this happens. And when you look at it, it's probably both people's fault.
Yeah, of course. I think some patients could push a little bit harder and set up poor expectations, regardless of what the doctor would say. And I think the doctor could do that as well. Not establishing, and again, back to a level of empowerment of, you can do this, I'll give you the tools. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'll give you the tools to do it.
Right.
Versus every step I have to instruct what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a good example of this is, and I've had this happen with patients, and I've had this conversation with patients where you go, we've done some immunological testing. This is the foods that you're reacting to right now. You're going to need to pull them out of your diet. And then the patient goes, well, I really love this. How would I cook that? Like, I don't know. I'm not a chef. I don't know how you would cook that. I guess you're going to have to figure it out. When you do, write down the recipe. Maybe we'll make a cookbook, but I don't know how you're going to do that. So you do have to establish like really clear boundaries. Like I always tell my patients this: I'm the architect, you're the contractor, right? I'm going to tell you what you need to build, and you're going to go build it. I don't care how you do it, but this is what you need to do. This is the building we're trying to achieve, and you're going to figure out how to build it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't give them a blueprint. I don't walk out there and go, okay, we're going to build this ginormous 3-story house and not give you any guidelines, a roadmap. But at the end of the day, the patients have got to put the work in, because we as doctors can't do all of it for you. There's going to have to be a certain level of accountability where they take the initiative and they figure out how to do some of it on their own.
That's exactly right. And I think if the doctor is setting, like you said, setting the boundaries, what to expect, how to go about it, and not, rolling up their sleeves and saying, okay, we're going to cook it this way, because what does that do? That sets an expectation that breaks a boundary that the doctor is going to show up to their house and help them cook.
Yeah.
I've personally had this before in clinic where, I give an excess amount of time on my patients. We want to explain everything and do everything and, and learn about their lives. It has to be quite the relationship. And there was this individual I was working with, and they asked me if I could come to their house to do house calls. And I was like, oh my goodness, well, how did that come about? Like, where did this come from? This is not the clinic, never has been, never do house calls. How did it get to that level? I still don't know. I look back at what I was doing and what boundaries maybe I allowed to slip where there was that request, because it wasn't just the request. It was a frustration after, when I said, no, I don't do that. It wasn't accepted. So, maybe I breached some of my own boundaries where that was that the patient expected that. So I don't know. And I think it can come on very subtly. So, so that's, I guess, the other thing is the boundaries. Unhealthy relationships with your doctors or dependencies with your doctors due to a lack of boundaries.
Yeah, I think if you were going to look at like the one common denominator, right, on all the patients that I've ever had, where maybe I've had some unhealthy, we'll call it codependence, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Where I feel like I'm not giving them what they need. They feel like I'm not giving them what they need. What it ultimately comes down to is that I haven't established clear boundaries, and I've let that slip. And that's not their fault. That's 100% my fault. I have to be really clear and concise with, this is what the expectation is. This is how we're going to approach it. Because honestly, at the end of the day, you just want to give them the tools that they need so that they can do it by themselves. But you don't want to have to be the tool.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Because if you are the tool and heaven forbid something happens to you, what happens then?
Right.
That patient is not only going to feel alone, unable to get help, but they can feel abandoned.
Yeah, 100%. I always tell this to my patient: at the end of the day, if I did my job, you'll never need me again, or you won't need me anymore. It's a terrible business model.
I know it is. That's the problem with functional medicine. People can get healthy and they don't need you anymore.
Yeah, it really is a bad model, but hey, it's really gratifying when you do it, right?
That's right. That's right. But yeah, that's I completely I like that. You know, if you are the tool, well, what are they going to do when you're not around or if there's a problem? And that's a true component of unhealthy codependency.
Right.
And you know, the definition of doctor is really teacher. So, you know, there's not too much teaching going on in medicine anymore. Any kind of medicine, natural or you know, allopathic medicine. There just isn't the teaching. And I think there's more dependency, unhealthy dependency on doctors now than there ever was.
Yeah, this is not unique to us.
No, there's the white coat that you need and the pill bottle that you need.
Well, and I think that you look at it, and when you look at some of the avenues that you can interact with your doctor, your provider, like I have patients all the time. They're like, oh, I just got online and like messaged my doctor directly. I didn't even have to go in with for an appointment. And I'm like, oh man.
It's kind of like the Amazon mindset.
Well, and being on the other side of that, right? It is very difficult because you think like, okay, that one patient, I tell people all the time, if you're trying to get a hold of me, do not email me because I'm terrible about email, right? I know that about myself. I will tell you that directly. But you think about it, like if you have, say you're saying you're seeing 15 patients a day conservatively, mm-hmm. and if you're a medical doctor, probably more, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, you have 20 unread emails or 20 unread direct messages. Like that's going to build up and that's going to bleed into other facets of your life. So it's not only are they developing like an unhealthy dependence on you, but then you're not getting the best advice because they're doing it at 10 o'clock at night when they've already put their kids to bed, had dinner, whatever. That's like, right. Are you getting their full undivided attention? Probably not.
Exactly. And then the advice or the feedback is terrible. It's back to the old philosophy, teach, give someone fish or teach someone to fish. Right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then to try to avoid that dependency. So there's going to be some dependency with the doctor, but is it realistic?
Is it healthy or unhealthy?
Yeah. Is it realistic and healthy? Or excessively dependent and unhealthy, where both parties are going to sign up for something that expectations that just can't be met.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing. So I guess anybody listening to this, they're pursuing a doctor or looking for a doctor. Hopefully they can take this advice and realize where reevaluate where they stand with their doctor and what their doctor is doing for them. Is their doctor teaching them and helping them and empowering them to make their own decisions? Or is their doctor like, you can't move until you call me and you get your prescription refill or whatever? I think as long as the patient's getting what they're getting out of their relationship, and hopefully they're not having anxiety if they can't get in to see their doctor or click on the link on their virtual telemedicine call. They shouldn't have massive anxiety if they can't make it into their doctor's appointment. It shouldn't be urgent all the time.
Right. 100%. It's not a crisis all the time. Right.
Yeah. So I think that's all I have for this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So if you guys got any value out of this at all today, please hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're going to continue to roll out new content each and every week. And again, if you guys would like to contact us at all, you can get a hold of us at info@brainstormingwiththedocs.com is the email. You can find a lot of information on our websites. Mine is northlakeschiropractic.com. That's for Dr. Kolby. Dr. Glenn's is drgharrison.com. Or subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, because we're going to continue to roll out new stuff. It's everywhere. And yeah, till next time, buddy, we'll just do another one.
That sounds good. We'll talk next time. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy. Bye.